Hello and welcome to the Anime Advocates, the show about what to watch or what to look for from ADV Films. As somewhat of an underdog myself, I tend to gravitate towards a lot of anime titles that are perhaps a little less mainstream than the average buff of the medium. I've got my noirs and my You're Under Arrest, but for this episode I'll be taking a look at a title that has even less of a cult status than anything I've looked at before. Its title? Kurau Phantom Memory. Produced by Bones in 2004, hot of the success of Full Metal Alchemist, this sci-fi gem always had the hardest time achieving a decent following. Mostly overshadowed by other hit series during its Japanese debut, by the time the show reached Western shelves after an unusually protracted release by ADV, audiences had all but moved on. It got a warm enough reception from critics, but all discussion since has been pretty muted, to the extent that I'm only the third person on YouTube to bother giving it a review. Was it simply not that engaging? Hard for me to agree with that notion because, without hesitation, Kurau is one of the most refreshing titles I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. So the question I posed with this video is not whether Kurau is one thing or another, but something a lot more upfront. Is Kurau Phantom Memory the greatest anime no one talks about? Let's dive right in. At the dawn of the 22nd century, scientists stationed on the moon are conducting research on a potential new fuel source called Renax energy. Dr. Hajime Amami, one of the leading experts in the field, invites his daughter Kurau to observe a routine experiment as part of her 12th birthday celebrations. Disaster suddenly strikes during the operation when the reactor disperses errant Renax energy, fusing with Kurau, who disintegrates and reforms before her father's eyes. While physically unharmed, Dr. Amame quickly discovers that Kurau's body has inadvertently become the host of a sentient Renax lifeform who is unable to leave on their own accord. Although distraught over the possible loss of his daughter, the alien being's empathy and sparks of Kurau's personality and memories encourages the good doctor to continue his research. Raising the new Rena Sapien as Kurau, they promise to help each other find a way to return the young girl's body before a series of traumatic tests convinces Hajime to hide her on Earth. 10 years later, Kurau was making a living as a freelance agent, specialising in undercover assignments considered too dangerous for an average human. While highly successful in the field, she lives a lonely existence, cut off from her father and desperate to be reunited with her pair, a second half prevalent in all Renax that has remained dormant inside Kurau's body ever since that fateful day on the lunar colony. One evening, to her delight, Kurau's pair finally emerges, a physically younger looking Rena Sapien whom she blesses with the name Christmas. Their happy reunion is short-lived, however, as the global police organisation begins hunting them down as part of a wider crackdown on Rena Sapiens who have emerged since the initial Renax experiments. With the help of Doug, a private eye assigned by Dr. Amami to watch over his daughter, Kurau and Christmas set off to outrun the GPO, uncover the secret behind the Renax experiments, and fulfill Kurau's promise to her father. Although marketed by ADV as an action-oriented series, in perhaps a misguided effort to boost sales, Kurau Phantom Memory is actually a more sophisticated sci-fi drama in a similar vein to series like Ghost in the Shell. Its futuristic setting definitely allows for some exciting set pieces, but the show's main focus lies in its exploration of human and not-so-human relationships. An overarching theme in Kurau is the existential value of companionship, characterised by the entire nature of the Renax. Far from being crazed alien invaders that assimilate humans just for the hell of it, they're the victims of human interference, brought into a vast world they don't fully understand and subjected to the most cruel of indignities when cornered. As Rena Sapiens, they would be completely lost without their pair, the death of which would cause immense suffering not just for themselves, but for the human soul still trapped within their surrogate bodies. And it is in this merciless world where our leading Renax try to live a peaceful existence. Something I find truly refreshing about Kurau and Christmas is how their bond, whether you interpret it as sisterly or romantic, gallantly transcends conventional depictions of love in other media. There's no kissing or gratuitous embraces of that kind, because their connection is something much deeper that goes beyond the physical. It's just love in its purest form, a selfless, loyal, and benevolent concern for the good of another, as my dictionary once taught me, and these two certainly fit that definition to a T. Kurau had already grown up to be a hard-working but cautious agent for the sake of her father, but with her pair's awakening she is blessed with not only a soulmate, but a new sense of responsibility. Christmas has little understanding of such a vast alien world, her inactive Renax powers making her incredibly vulnerable like the young girl she resembles. This presents a bit of a balancing act for Kurau to follow, allowing her other half to experience the joys of our world, whilst ensuring her safety from their GPO pursuers. Such devotion to the young Renax pays off in the end though, as just like Kurau's own upbringing by her adopted family, Christmas is able to develop a strong admiration for humanity. Even under the constant threat of capture, she can't help but maintain a positive outlook, because to see the beauty of the world with the one most special to her, however dangerous, is what ultimately makes life worth living. This optimism in turn gives Kurau an invaluable motivator. Even when all hope seems lost, Christmas is always there to put her back on her feet, making them an inseparable couple and the perfect team to help their Renax brethren return home. But the show's quality doesn't just stop with Kurau and Christmas's relationship, as Phantom Memory is also a great father and daughter story. Having already lost his wife to a terminal illness, the last thing Dr. Amami wanted was to see his daughter's body become the vessel for an alien life form. He works tirelessly to learn more about the Renax and discover a cure for other experiment victims, but with his research being overseen and abused by the GPO, the immense guilt he suffers never truly diminishes. The only thing that keeps his mind occupied is his love for Kurau, whom, even as a Rena Sapien, has always shared his grief over something completely out of their control. This mutual understanding of each other's pain only intensifies when Hajime and Kurau reunite. After so many years of living on her own, Kurau's happiness is immediately bolstered with the arrival of Christmas. But it's this very development that brings about a very troubling dilemma for both father and daughter. Kurau is still bound to the promise she made to Hajime 10 years ago, but is terrified over what would become of her pair. And while Hajime is desperate to have his daughter back, he certainly doesn't want to see the Renax lose someone just as precious to her. Both characters' anguish make for some of the most heartrending drama in the entire series. It's not easy to fault either one of them for what happened to Kurau, and that anticipation over how they'll eventually reverse the process was always left hanging in my mind. At whatever cost, I just wanted Hajime and Kurau to achieve happiness for each other. And there are so many other great plotlines that I could spend hours discussing, from Doug's efforts to reconnect with his son, to the utterly tragic story of Yvonne and Jessica. One more plot thread I'd like to talk about though is that of GPO detective Ayaka Steiger. While she's initially introduced as a stoic adversary to Kurau and Christmas, the many layers to her character gradually peel away to reveal a much more complicated individual. As a teenager, Ayaka's family was brutally assassinated on Christmas Eve, the event of which caused her to close herself off to others and solely commit to becoming a noble GPO officer. By the time she's assigned to capture Kurau, she has nothing but the utmost confidence in what she's doing, and it takes a lot of convincing for her to believe the Rena Sapien's innocence. Not so much out of loyalty for the GPO, but because such questioning of her profession would undo all those years she's spent finding an enemy that would give her a purpose in life. When she finally discovers just how much the GPO have kept from her, Ayaka is left devastated over what part her entire life may have played in her superior's grand plan. With no one left to turn to, she reluctantly seeks out Kurau, making a pact to uncover humanity's crimes against the Renax together. What makes this team up with her former enemies so poignant is the unexpected rapport she is able to develop with them. Even after all the trouble she had caused the pair, they are quick to forgive her, with Kurau correctly deducing that Ayaka had always seemed lonesome during their many encounters. And it's this compassion that profoundly changes Ayaka for the better, opening her heart after years of emotional suppression and allowing her to enjoy life once again. Just a great character overall, and definitely one of the highlights of the series outside of the main Renax plot. In hindsight, I think ADV seriously undersold Kurau with a flashy trailer that made it out to be just another sci-fi action series, because what I ended up watching was a lot more captivating than I initially anticipated. Its global conspiracy plotline is not particularly original for a show of its kind, but it's the lengths Phantom Memory goes to address the emotional consequences of human corruption on both sides of the conflict that makes it so engaging. What I ultimately took away from Kurau, as corny as it sounds, was a sense that anyone, regardless of their background, is capable of making the world a better place through cooperation. Because if a GPO officer and a Rena Sapien can learn to understand one another, there's surely hope out there for the rest of us. God, that was so terrible. Having already animated hits like Razafon and Fullmetal Alchemist in the 2 years prior to Kurau's broadcast, Bones had amassed a ton of experience producing great-looking shows using the then newfangled digital format. It's little surprise then that the production values here are just as high, if not more so, than those earlier productions. The slightly more realistic character designs lend themselves very nicely for an emotionally driven series, with the resulting expressions adding a lot of credibility to the drama. When a character cries, it really looks like it's coming from the heart. Likewise, characters like Ayaka, while appearing unflappable on the surface, are given subtle nuances in their performance to hint at whatever internal conflict they may be going through. For such an important component of the story, I must also commend the effects animators for giving Renax Energy a look that exhibits both its beauty and danger. Having Kurau elegantly sneak through walls and dance through the sky like a comet is such an awesome spectacle, matched only by the pairing of other Rena Sapiens recklessly using such power beyond their physical limits. Overexposure to Renax Energy also proves to be quite a horrifying visual. Having the victims disappear in a flurry of golden light is not the most violent way to die, but to see the last glimmer of life on their faces vanish out of existence while their loved ones break down beside them is something so dispiriting that it really sticks with you. But I don't think I can articulate enough how much I love the overall art direction. I had almost gotten used to futuristic settings looking decrepit and uninviting, but I guess owing to the optimistic tone of the story, Phantom Memory opts for a utopian vision of an Earth that has more or less reached its pinnacle. Technologically lavish, free of pollution, and still teeming in natural beauty, the environments have such a harmonious presence when compared to the more dismal interpretations of humanity's future. The aesthetic certainly owes itself more to Fifth Element than it does Blade Runner, which I believe was the right call. This is the sort of world I can see Christmas admiring so much through her travels. And for the rest of us, it's a dazzling backdrop for the series. On the musical side of things, Yukari Katsuki was able to compose a beautiful soundtrack that accentuates Kurau's themes of love and humanity, fixating on the bittersweet, but always leaving the viewer with a sense of composure. Particular standouts are the show's vocal themes. Opening theme Beloved Sea of Infinity and ending theme Moonlight are exceptional audio representations of Kurau and Christmas's relationship. The former a spirited nostalgic piece, with the latter being a lot more wistful in its tempo and lyrics. Insert Lonely Freedom, on the other hand, is very much emblematic of the Renax's plight on Earth. As its title suggests, it's a lovely little ballad that runs through the emotions of wanting to explore a wider world, whilst acknowledging the heartache caused from the loss of companionship. All in all, Phantom Memory is a wonderful production, both visually and audibly, that lives up to the reputation Bones achieved through their better-known titles. ADV's dubbing of Kurau Phantom Memory had the misfortune of being released between mid-2007 and early 2008, just as the company's luck started to run out. Despite these troubles, with longtime director Matt Greenfield at the helm and a terrific selection of actors, they were still able to produce yet another winner. As the titular Kurau, we have Monica Riol, whose performance I believe ranks amongst the best in her career. For an alien trapped inside a human body, you could be forgiven for thinking the acting would be something slow and plain-spoken, but Monica plays to the character's strengths by making Kurau more human than probably anyone else in the show. Whether she's acting fearless, playful, or affectionate, her voice has such a warm demeanour that brilliantly contrasts the more brusque deliveries of her GPO adversaries. When Kurau's on the scene, you can just about trust her with anything.
Here's the plan. You'll handle Wind. While you send his Renax part back, I'll see if I can send the rest of these Renax back to their own world.
But Kurau, your body's still hurt. Are you sure?
Don't worry. I've done it before, you know.
Jessica Bonet, having previously established a penchant for cheapish young girls, made for excellent casting as Christmas. While gentle and modest, Jessica's voice has a lot of durability, allowing her to portray Christmas with increasing diligence as she becomes more and more independent of Kurau's protection. The result is a very natural vocal evolution from a timid fish out of water to a devoted protector of humanity, with strength and courage that almost mirrors that of Kurau during the series' climax.
There was a time when Kurau was the only thing in this world that mattered to me. But that was before I'd seen any of it. Before I learned how many wonderful people there were who I could love and be loved by in return. That's why I have to protect this world. I have to protect it for the sake of all of them and for Kurau.
Tiffany Grant rose to the challenge of voicing Ayaka Steiger with a performance that is very much as complex as the character herself. For most of the show, she plays it very straight, rarely shedding emotion as Ayaka coldly goes about her job. But there's always that underlining edge to her voice that hints towards a great sadness, slowly bubbling away until it's all let out. My favourite scene for Ayaka has got to be her first night with Kurau's family. Tiffany's delivery is so raw when the GPO detective finally confronts herself over her antagonism of Rena Sapiens, eliciting the strength involved for Ayaka to be open with her feelings for the first time in years.
It was never about the Renax, was it? I needed an enemy, a target, to give me a purpose. Is that the kind of person I've become? How did I get that way?
Hey. Trouble sleeping?
But I can't end this review without singing praises for John Gramillion as Dr. Amami. He straight up nails the voice of a desolate father with so much regret and loathing for his life's work. On the rare occasion he plays the role with cautious optimism, but for the majority of Hajame's screen time, the performance is very sensitive, indicative of a man tirelessly slaving towards a means to undo the damage he's caused for so many people. I think any parent will be able to connect with the Doctor's anguish over the possible loss of his daughter just from John's acting alone.
And I came into this world because your daughter called.
But why would Kurau have called you here? And if you're Renax, then where is Kurau? Where did you send her? For God's sake, all I want is my daughter. Give her back to me.
But this is Kurau.
Please.
Kurau's English dub may forever languish in obscurity, no thanks in part to its 3-year delay, but in featuring such passionate, underrated vocal work from some of ADV's finest, it was certainly worth the wait, and a true testament to the quality of the studio's output near the very end of its existence. After all is said and done, I must return to that question I posed at the beginning of the video. Is Kurau Phantom Memory the greatest anime no one talks about? Well, at the risk of shooting myself in the foot when I find yet another overlooked title, I think it might be. It's not a series that bogs itself down in violence or some frivolous struggle between good and evil. It's just an alien couple trying to fulfill a promise and just happening to achieve peace with humanity along the way. And despite how emotional it gets, it's not afraid to have a positive attitude. So many shows spring for the downbeat ending, but when watching the epilogue to Kurau, I couldn't help but finish with a huge smile on my face. It just left me with a good feeling, which, considering how awful this decade has started for a lot of people, is something I think we can all get behind. The price for a complete DVD box set from either ADV or Funimation varies considerably nowadays, but online streaming is once again a convenient option courtesy of Funimation's video-on-demand service. If you love character-driven sci-fi or are just craving something uplifting to watch until our world gets itself back together, you owe it to yourself to give Kurau Phantom Memory a look. It just might be the series you're looking for. Until then, I am the Anime Advocate, and I'll see you all next time.